listening to LSU Daily with Matt Musso, your home for all things LSU sports.
Off and running here on another edition of LSU Daily. Welcome in. Glad to have you with me. Put a button on the week here. Give you our final thoughts. LSU, South Alabama, Saturday night in Death Valley. The Tigers and the Jaguars do battle. Kickoff set for 6:30. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, all the things for the podcast. It's greatly appreciated. And, of course, as always, follow me on social media, Twitter X, at Musso Matthew. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. All of that greatly appreciated as well. All right, let's not waste any more time. Let's dive right into this. So on Thursday's show, we really looked at South Alabama. On today's show, want to tell you what we're looking for from LSU this weekend. And then, obviously, score prediction and things of that nature. But when we're talking LSU, the majority of this today will focus on the defensive side of the football for a couple reasons. That is where the most intrigue still lies with this LSU team. I have one thing on the offensive side, and it kind of relates to the defense. Well, it doesn't relate. It's in the same vein. But the defensive side of the ball is still where the most intrigue lies with this LSU team, and obviously it's where the most intrigue lies in this football game. I made it perfectly clear on Thursday. LSU is going to score. LSU is going to score plenty against South Alabama. Their defense is not good. I don't care that they allowed 10 points to Northwestern State. I don't care that they went on the road and held App State to 14. I don't care. Their secondary has gotten just completely shredded a few times. While yes, they have a few guys back there who are playing better, they do not have the horses in that unit, top to bottom, to keep up with the athletes that LSU has on the outside. And if LSU keeps Garrett Nussmeier clean, he will throw for a lot of yards and a lot of touchdowns, and LSU will score a lot of points. So I'm not really worried about that. But the intrigue that LSU has on the defensive side of the ball, having to replace Harold Perkins, having to really simplify things in the back end yet again, even though it's worked to an extent, and you're seeing even more guys emerge along the defensive line, that takes precedent, especially against an offense that, with Gio Lopez, with Fluff Bothwell, is dynamic. With Jamal Pritchard on the outside, is dynamic. And we talked an awful lot about the running ability of Gio Lopez and Fluff Bothwell combined, kind of comped it to what you saw from South Carolina with Lenoris Sellers and Rocket Sanders, where Rocket Sanders, Fluff Bothwell, really similar back in the sense that they are just tackle-breaking machines. They are both very hard to get down. Big, thick backs, very hard to get down. And then you look at Lenoris Sellers. Yes, he's bigger than Gio Lopez, but Gio Lopez, 220 pounds. Still a pretty nice-sized quarterback, kind of in the vein of a running back maybe, but also probably a better thrower of the ball than Lenoris Sellers. But it's, for something you've seen on your schedule already, it's a really good comp. That didn't go so hot for you. So how do you fix that this go-round? Well, let's dive right into what we're looking for from the LSU defense. And there's something on each level. And look, the biggest hole right now is no Harold Perkins. So let's just start at the linebacker spot. And we've talked plenty this week about how LSU goes about replacing Harold Perkins. And quite simply, you don't. You don't have another guy like that on your roster. Said it on Monday when we first talked about this injury. In no world, in no universe, in no reality is LSU better without Harold Perkins on the field. You just aren't. Because that guy's skill set is unique, it is rare, and you don't have another guy like that. And even though you aren't seeing the big monster production, Harold Perkins' presence was felt. Teams would go away from him. They tried to just take him completely out of the play for that reason because, as Brian Kelly put it, he can wreck your day. You no longer have that guy. Now, we've talked plenty about what they might do. You could see more 4-2-5. You could see Major Burns move back down to that star position in that 4-2-5. When they go 4-3, obviously Wes Weeks can now come onto the field. You're obviously going to keep Whit Weeks and Greg Penn out there. Whit Weeks has been your best linebacker on the season. Brian Kelly, when he met with the media on Thursday, shed some more light on this and mentioned, and he mentioned this on Monday as well in his press conference, about Xavier Atkins. They've activated Xavier Atkins in the second group now. So that's one, as BK put it Thursday, slight change. So, when they have to rotate, Xavier Atkins is now really next in line in that second group. A little bit of background on Atkins. He's a true freshman. Wears number 30. He was a 4-star prospect in last year's class. Number 26 linebacker in the country. Top 50 overall player out of the state of Texas. Yes, bit undersized, 6 foot, 210, but he's young. I don't think you see, a ton of snaps from Xavier Atkins, but you will see him out there. I mean, after Whit Weeks, Greg Penn, West Weeks, Xavier Atkins is going to be the next guy in line. So familiarize yourself there, and it's going to be very interesting to see what production he can bring and how LSU is able to utilize him in the structure of their defense. As for the guys you're more familiar with, West Weeks is fully back. He is ready to go and feeling good, and they're going to put him back into the linebacker rotation. The thing that really struck me from Brian Kelly's media availability on Thursday when talking about linebacker was talking about Whit Weeks, and he praised Whit Weeks, his ability in space, and he equaled it to Harold Perkins. He made it clear to say not the pass rush ability, but their ability in space, and how he believes that can help LSU's defense maintain their versatility. That's a mouthful, man. And look, again, I know Harold Perkins, maybe the tackling in space wasn't great this year, but everything else he did was. Coverage, like everything else he did in space so far this year through 4 games for you was good. And I'm gonna firmly be in see it, have to see it to believe it mode with that. Because as I started this whole, talk about, you don't have another guy on the roster like that with the combination of talents that Harold Perkins has. And I think Whit Weeks has been fantastic. I think he's got great speed. But I'm really going to keep a close eye. That's a mouthful. To equal his ability in space to Harold Perkins and say it's going to help you maintain your versatility, that's a mouthful. So that's obviously something that I want to see. But that's what Brian Kelly's giving you, a pretty good inside look at their plan there. You'll see Xavier Atkins. West Weeks is fully ready to go. Of course, you can see Major Burns move back down, and keep an eye on Whit Weeks in space. Like, they're going to put him in that position to try and fill that void of not having Harold Perkins, of having Whit Weeks play in space. At least that's what I take from what the head coach said. So keep an eye on that for Saturday. That's extremely interesting. And again, it might not crush you against South Alabama, but going forward, you have this week in the bye to really get that in order before you face Ole Miss. And I will remind you, Harold Perkins in 2022 had his coming out party against Ole Miss, to the point where Lane Kiffin said the game changed when they put 40 in the game. In his postgame, that's when it changed. LSU fell behind 17-0, and then they dominated the rest of that game. You're not going to have that guy. So you have 2 weeks to kind of figure it out as best you can before you play a really, really important game against the Rebels. Now, up front, on the line, I'm fired up to see Dom McKinley. If you have been listening to this show, you know how high I am on Dom McKinley. This is a 5-star guy, number 1 player in the state of Louisiana, top 15 player in the country last year, battled turf toe early. You finally got him into the action against UCLA, and he plays 18 snaps and gets his first career sack. I can't wait to see more. Dom McKinley has all the makings of an absolute game wrecker in his time at LSU. And specifically, I'm fired up to see the freshman tackle duo that you could put out there between McKinley and Ahmad Bro, because Ahmad Bro has made really good strides. He's put on a lot of weight, and you've seen him play plenty, about 30 snaps against UCLA. But sticking with McKinley, the best thing there is he's 100% healthy from the turf toe now, per Brian Kelly. And Brian Kelly referenced, or mentioned, I should say, in his Thursday media availability, the maturity level growing for Dom McKinley. Not that he's an immature kid, just that he's a freshman going from high school to college for the first time, and your schedule changes and the technique changes, all things that Kelly mentioned. You're going to class. We've all heard Brian Kelly go through that spiel. And now Dominic McKinley's getting on top of that. And it's really allowing him to hone in on development and football. And I mean, on 18 snaps, he picks up his first sack against a Power 4 opponent. I know UCLA is not that good. They're actually not good at all. But this is still a Power 4 opponent. Still guys on Power 4 scholarship. That kid goes out there and does that. So what can he now do against South Alabama? Their offensive line has held up quite nicely so far this season. This is going to be the biggest test. And I'm getting excited about this because, as we talked about earlier in the week, the defensive front has been better than expected, even after losing Jacoby and Guillory. You're not better without Jacoby and Guillory, but you've been better than expected as a whole throughout the year. And now having Dominic McKinley be added to that, I'm getting fired up about that because I think he can do incredible things for LSU this season. And you already saw that on display. So as they continue to ramp him up, how does the production go for McKinley? Because they're on track for him right now. We found out about that turf toe injury with McKinley after the Nichols game heading into South Carolina. And they said going into South Carolina, Brian Kelly did that he was, a week or two away. Okay, so everyone thought that meant South Alabama. But you see him last week against UCLA. Now you have South Alabama, bye week, and he should just be full bore, ready to go, play as many snaps as you want him to play against Ole Miss. And that's an exciting proposition. Without Harold Perkins out there, you need to find another guy who can be a playmaker on this defense. A guy you can count on, a guy who can wreck somebody's day. Braden Swinson early in the year has proven to be that guy, as has Savion Jones at times. But you don't really have that guy in the back end. Don't really have that guy even at your linebacking position yet. Anymore, at least. Could it be Whit Weeks? Maybe. Let's see. Brian Kelly's high on him, as we just talked about. I think Dominic McKinley could potentially be that guy, even as a freshman. And you get that disruptive on the front where you have three guys that can wreck a day, that changes the entire dynamic of your defense. Because then you're able to get pressure with four, and it changes the entire dynamic of your defense. So I am extremely fired up to continue to watch Dominic McKinley. The last thing defensively, and then we'll hit on the one thing offensively, and then give you your score prediction, is the secondary, and specifically the safety position. And Brian Kelly has talked about this all week. They have broken that down to the basics. Leverage on the football, sure tackling, communication. That's what they want to see. And you've seen a lot of young guys back there. And y'all, we talked about this heading into the Nichols game, where you knew you'd really start to see young guys, because they rotated in a bunch of guys in the secondary against USC. We talked about that after that game in the recap. There was I think it was 10 different guys, or 8. It was 8 or 10 different guys you saw in the secondary in the opener against USC. This has been a theme. They're trying to find their combination. And going into that Nichols game, because you had some injuries back there and Jordan Gilbert suspended for the first half, you knew you'd see a lot of young guys. And we harped on communication before that game, and they're still having to harp on that. Now, granted, outside of that UCLA game, you really haven't seen a lot of busts in coverage. You haven't seen that guy running downfield open by 15, 20 yards like you did in 2023. So, in a sense, it's worked outside of one game. Outside of one half in one game. Let me actually be perfectly clear. One half in one game this year, LSU has had horrible coverage busts. That is a immense improvement from last season. But they're still wanting more. And where it really even comes into most the communication isn't in the passing game, it's in that running game. And it's the run fits and the fundamentals of that. Being in the right place, being in position. And that's where LSU just has not been good enough for the bulk of this season on defense, and specifically in the secondary. Where you have safeties, missing, or cornerbacks, all the fitting with your linebackers thing hasn't worked. Have the communication there, the fundamentals to be in the right spot this week against South Alabama. Because you're going to need to. Because while Gio Lopez is a great thrower of the football, they're going to want to run him in this game because that is what has given LSU's defense the most problems all season is mobility at the quarterback position. And not just mobility, the running threat at the quarterback position. And you pair him with a great back like Blothwell, and it's a great name. It's really hard to say when you get moving. You're going to see plenty of that. And then the rotation. I think you continue to see a lot of young guys out there. Zy Alexander is still in the concussion protocol and is listed as questionable. See if he's able to go on game day. But regardless, you know you're going to have a lot of rotating in of young guys like P.J. Woodland, like Deshaun Spears, like Jordan Allen, maybe even Kylan Jackson. There's going to be a lot of guys back there, youth, and that's really where the leverage on the ball, sure tackling, and communication comes into play. Offensively, Chris Hilton. He's once again listed as probable, but going to be in that game time decision mode again. He'll go through warm-ups. Is he ready to go? If he is, they'll play him. This was the thing last week. He went through warm-ups. He wasn't ready to go. You didn't see him against UCLA. LSU needs him back. Yes, you've seen them be able to stretch the field a little bit the last few weeks with Aaron Anderson and Kyle Parker. But Chris Hilton just adds a completely other dimension with that. We've talked about it. Just his ability to track the football makes him a better deep threat than anybody you have on your team. And it is the one aspect of your offense that you're lacking consistently. You've seen it in spurts the last few weeks, but think back to last year, how LSU was able to stretch the field, specifically with Brian Thomas. It was constant. That's what you're lacking. Chris Hilton can provide that at that level of consistency. It's kind of the same thing with Dom McKinley that we talked about. You've got 2 weeks before you really, 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 really need him. What can you get out of him? Leading up into that, how fast can you ramp him up? You really need him to get there, get out there on the field. I think you'd feel really, I don't want to say you need him. I think you'd feel much better about that process if you were able to get him out on the field Saturday against South Alabama for some amount of snaps. It doesn't have to be a lot, just for some. And, man, you know, for a guy like Chris Hilton, you want it. So he's just had such horrible luck throughout his time at LSU. But, I mean, that is, and when you're talking about the LSU offense right now, because you're starting to run the ball better. Not for huge yardage in the game, but when you have to get those tough yards, you're starting to run the football better. So that dimension's coming back to your offense. You need that deep threat. Chris Hilton can be that. Is he ready to go? We'll see. Again, listed as probable for this weekend against South Alabama. All right. Score prediction time. Tigers win it. I have it 41-24. I do not think that they cover. I think it is a game early until they adjust again, probably in the second half, to what South Alabama's doing, and then they're able to pull away. I do not think LSU is on upset alert in this game. I think they are vastly superior just about everywhere. It's just going to take them time because that's where this team is right now. Is that what anybody wants to hear? No, of course not. But that's where they are right now, and it's going to take them time to adjust throughout the game. Would I love to see them come out and just dominate? Absolutely. But I have it 41-24 with another dominant second half for LSU because until they show me anything different, that's what I think this team is. The good news is that's good enough to beat South Alabama and do it fairly comfortably. All right, you know we'll have a full recap for you here on LSU Daily, so y'all get subscribed, share. All of that is greatly appreciated. Follow me on social media at Musso Matthew. That's Twitter X. At Matthew Musso1 on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook as well. It's greatly appreciated. And be here next time for more on LSU Daily.